my fault.
Next up, we have Season 4, Episode 14, The Grove, which is obviously Carol's greatest episode of the entire series. Man, oh man, this episode was heartbreaking. Just seeing, I mean, the episode for the first 30 minutes was kind of okay. You know, it was kind of interesting seeing development between Carol and Tyrese go on, obviously, since Carol killed Karen and David. That was great. But the minute that Lizzie kills Mika was just heart-wrenching. I was like, holy shit. I mean, seeing the comics and how it happened a little different, and obviously Lizzie and Mika weren't actual characters, the fact that they used that story portion of the comics for Lizzie and Mika was just so brilliant, and it worked so well and was absolutely heartbreaking. And then seeing Carol have to kill her was just holy shit. I mean, this episode was one of those like turning points of the entire series for Carol. I mean, this is when Carol became a completely different character. I mean, some would argue that when she killed Karen and David, she was completely different, which is true, but I think this is a whole nother portion of Carol. This is a whole nother part of her that, you know, developed her over the seasons, and I'm really surprised that she ended up being such an important character in later seasons. I expected Carol to be dead within like season 3, and she just kept on coming on and becoming a greater and greater character, and this was, I think, her turning point episode, which really made it an impactful and beautiful episode. Next up, we have another amazing Carol episode, which is Season 6, Episode 2, JSS. This episode came out of absolutely nowhere. I mean, it was Episode 2 of the season. No one expected it to be crazy. And holy shit, out of nowhere, some wolf just comes and just slices this lady in half with a freaking machete. And we were just like, what the fuck just happened? And the next 20 minutes of the episode is literally just wolves attacking Alexandria with melee weapons, which makes it so much more brutal. The fact that it's not just a gun attack. No, it is a bunch of just... It is psychopathic people coming in with melee weapons, slicing and dicing people, and it was an insane episode to see. I mean, Carol killed at least 15 people in this episode, I feel like. Probably less, but still an insane amount of people. She was just going ham. We got to see some badass Morgan. Obviously, he wasn't killing, but he was still just taking out people like a badass, you know, knocking them out. And especially that one fight against the one wolf in the end of the episode was pretty awesome to watch. And it was just an overall intense episode that no one saw coming, absolutely no one, and really developed Carol into a way where she started to realize maybe killing is not great. I don't know, she started to feel like guilty about all the people she's killed over time, and obviously that develops into a much more significant story arc into later parts of the season, but this is kind of the start of her feeling bad about killing and feeling guilty about it. Next up, we have Season 7, Episode 8, Heart Still Beating. I loved the beginning of this episode with Negan shaving that beard off finally. I wanted that thing to be shaved off for a long time. And this episode was just kind of a comedic episode for a lot of parts, especially with Negan. I mean, that's all I need is some Negan comedy to me enjoy an episode. But then it had some darker themes to it, like when he kills Spencer, which first of all was done really well, which was similar to the comics, of course. And then Olivia gets shot, and this is when Draco realizes that he cannot work with Negan. He can't do this. It's not possible. There is no way they can succeed in life, and they don't want to live in fear anymore. They don't want to live in fear that maybe they'll be next, or, you know, someone else will be next, and they don't want that to happen. So they finally rise up and have one of the coolest endings of an episode ever. Everyone's just rising up at the hilltop. Daryl comes back. Of course, this is also the episode Daryl escaped, which kills, you know, Fat Joey. And it was just a really intense... That soundtrack at the end of the episode was beautiful. I love that soundtrack. The whole entire sequence of everyone just smiling, being happy about that, the fact that they are finally stepping up and they're finally going to do something and, you know, meet more people and get more people to build up a, you know, larger army against Negan. And that obviously leads into Season 8 very, very well. And this was the start of it. And I thought it was a really good extended episode. You know, came right after Sing Me a Song, which I thought was also a really good episode. So it was 2 back-to-back episodes that I thought were really strong, and that was one of the best parts of Season 7. This episode was, of course, the introduction of the prison as we know it, and I loved it. I loved when they, first of all, decided to, you know, have Rick go and try to open up, or close the gate, the main gate to the prison courtyard, so they can at least sleep in the, you know, the yard overnight. And that was an intense scene. Everyone was just, I think it felt so different this episode compared to season 2, because everyone, it was, you know, obviously a time skip of a couple months, so everyone was newer. They felt, you know, everyone was more of a survivor now. Some people, even like Carol, were shooting big machine guns, and it was like very, very different to see. And of course, then we get to see them going through the prison, slowly killing walkers. I mean, I think a shitload of walkers died this episode. It was up in the hundreds for the amount of walkers killed in this episode. They were just going through the prison like badasses, just slicing and dicing. And then they go through the tombs later on and clear out the rest of it. And of course, Herschel gets bit and they have to chop it off. And just overall, a very intense, action-packed episode. Wasn't much, you know, there was some good dialogue here and there, like some Carol and Daryl bonding, some Lori and Rick kind of problems going on between them. They still were having issues, which I thought was interesting to watch. And then, of course, you know, the rest of it was just awesome to watch. I mean, this is just an entertaining episode all around. Just seeing them kill walkers is one of the best. Honestly, like, The Walking Dead has amazing writing, has amazing soundtracks, has amazing everything. But one thing that can never get boring is just seeing walkers get killed. It is entertaining, and I will always love it. Next up, we have Season 5, Episode 3, 4 Walls in a Roof. One of the most shocking and intense and scary episodes we've ever seen. I expect a lot of Season 9 episodes to be similar to this in terms of the feeling and the tone and the overall atmosphere of the episode. Especially the beginning, man. Just hearing that soundtrack, that really chilling soundtrack in the beginning, and then seeing, you know, throughout the episode, just the darkness of it, and then, of course, them coming through, and then Rick and the gang coming behind them and just destroying them and then beating them down to a pulp. I mean, they deserved it for being fucking cannibals and trying to eat them, but I thought this episode was just a brilliant, scary, and terrifying episode. I thought it was shocking because I expected the hunters to last a lot longer than this. Obviously, they didn't. Not that it was a bad thing by any means necessary, but it was definitely a strange thing. I felt like I didn't see it coming. But then the rest of the episode, of course, the ending, Daryl coming through the woods, and we were like, what the hell happened to Carol? Is it Beth? Did Beth come back, or who is it? We were all confused, and then of course it came into realization as to what the hell happened later on in the episodes as the season went on. But I thought first 3 episodes of Season 5 were some of the best first 3 episodes of any season we've ever had. And this episode does not show any difference. It was still an intense, sad episode because we were losing Bob, but it was also scary and atmospheric, beautiful. Loved it. That's how I feel about this episode. And I expect, since it was written by Angela Kang, I expect a lot of Season 9 episodes to be similar to this. Next up, coming at number 20, we have Season 4, Episode 5, Interment. This episode was the best episode of the sickness story arc, in my honest opinion. I mean, we had so much stuff going on. It was all at the prison. Obviously, we had, you know, the Bob and Michonne group out on their own, and Rick returned without Carol. But everything going on in the prison was so intense, especially for Herschel. This was like Herschel's episode, which it really needed to happen. We really needed a good Herschel episode right before his death in the later mid-season finale. But this episode it was all about him. It really was. And then it had a lot of Maggie in there as well, which I love her character. And then we have Rick and Carl having really good father-son bonding. And then the walkers break into the fence, and they have to that was one of the most badass scenes in Walking Dead history, when they're just lighting up the walkers at the fence when they come in with the machine guns, and they're just standing side to side. And that was so badass. And then you had it, you know, clipping over to Maggie trying to save Glenn and all the walkers that were turning in the sickness room. It was just a really intense episode, really well done. It was a great one. I really enjoyed this whole sickness story arc, but I would say this episode was the standout of all of them. Next up, I have Season 3, Episode 8, Made to Suffer. This episode is where it kind of made me realize, okay, I'm sticking with this show, because I started watching around the beginning of Season 3, and as the season went on, you know, it was good, and especially some of the earlier episodes of Season 3, which I'll get into later, got me into the show. But this episode is what signified my love for it. I was like, okay, definitely is going to be a series I'm going to stick with probably till the end of it, honestly. That's what I thought to myself. I didn't expect it to go on this long, honestly. I expected it to end at like season 6, but you know, obviously it's going on a lot longer, and we have the spin-offs and stuff like that, so it's never gonna end, honestly. Walking Dead is like Star Wars. It's just never gonna end. But Made to Suffer really was the intense first battle of the governor versus Rick's group, and they were attacking, and it was really well done action sequences between Rick's group and them, and they were throwing smokes. I really loved the whole Woodbury just overall atmosphere. It was a really nice location to have a battle at, especially it was all like, you know, it was all nice looking, and then it was just riddled with a war that went down in this episode, and I absolutely loved it. And then you got the ending where, you know, Daryl and Merle meet each other for the first time on screen. You know, we haven't obviously seen them meet each other other than hallucinations, so obviously they met each other before, but we didn't see them interact with each other, and it's the first episode to see that. And Andrea was freaking out, and everyone was saying, kill them, kill them. It was great. It was great. I love this episode. So it comes in at number 19. Next up, we have Season 6, Episode 16, The Last Day on Earth. People love giving this a low spot on the list because they're like, oh, that cliffhanger, oh, it ruined it. Dude, looking back at this episode, although I didn't like the cliffhanger at first, looking back at it after seeing Season 7 premiere, you take so much more appreciation for this episode. I mean, the build-up and the tension towards the ending of the episode was just so well done. It was a long episode of just a cat and mouse between the Saviors and the Rick's group and the RV. I mean, I just absolutely loved it. I don't know how people didn't love it. I mean, then you had Morgan going after Carol. That wasn't the most interesting part of the episode, of course, but it was definitely there. And then the beautiful, amazing introduction of Negan. I absolutely love that introduction. I am so happy they got Jeffrey Dean Morgan, because he does a perfect Negan in my opinion. And I mean, obviously I would like his a little more buffer, you know, but it doesn't matter. He still did an incredible job in this episode, and obviously for seasons to come afterwards. But this episode made him seem scary, and I do love I didn't love the cliffhanger at first. I think anyone could say the same thing. But after seeing Season 7, you realize that the cliffhanger actually did a really good job at making us, you know, question who was the death, who died in between the season. Obviously, spoilers kind of ruined it a little bit, stuff like that, but it's still it was still enjoyable leading up to it, still, you know, predicting and stuff like that, until obviously the spoilers came out. But it made for also some really cool promotional material for Season 7, a really cool trailer, really just awesome stuff going on around that time period. And if you didn't like it, I'm sorry, but I thought after watching the one episode, this episode, you look back on it, it was a beautiful episode. It had amazing soundtracks, had amazing themes and character interactions, and it was just great. It was a depressing episode, yes, but I think that's what made it great. Next up, we have Season 8, Episode 13, Do Not Send Us Astray. This was the big battle that we get to see. Probably one of the last bigger battles. Obviously, the finale didn't have a huge battle. It was sort of like a mini battle, but this was the last sort of battle of the all-out war that we kind of had between, obviously, you know, the survivors and the saviors, all going down at the hilltop. Kind of similar to the comics, not 100%, but I loved the dark, you know, the darkness of the whole thing. The whole fact that it was at night made it so much more like scary and kind of fearful to see the group being kind of outnumbered by the saviors, but still being able to, you know, make better plans. They have they have the strategy, they do, and they obviously had a really good strategy of locking them in with the truck or with the bus after Daryl led them in with the motorcycle, and then just lighting them up. And it really, honestly, really good shootout, like the first 20 minutes of the episode roughly, and I loved all of it. And then we of course got the big you know, people turning from getting hit by arrows and such. I saw people complaining a lot about this episode, saying, oh, it doesn't make any sense, why didn't anyone wake up, you know? It was stupid, like little nitpicks, but you know, no one woke up because, you know, it went by quick. You know, the whole scene went by pretty quick. You know, when you hear a noise, you don't wake up right away. You know, you take a few seconds, you kind of get up a little bit. There's a lot of people in the house. You're expected to hear some noise here and there. You know, if you thought you were alone, then maybe. But, you know, it made sense, and I liked how fearful it was. It brought us back to the Season 4 feeling of the sickness story arc where people were just turning in the middle of the night. One of the most fearful events, parts of Season 8 of the entire series, honestly. I absolutely loved it. We got to see everyone just together in one place again, which was great because, you know, this whole Season 7, Season 8, they were all split up, and then we get to see everyone just together. It felt really well, and it felt good. I enjoyed it a lot because of that one reason that they were all together, and obviously this main image here of the 4 like original characters together. I guess you call them 4 OGs. That's what I call them, but hopefully we don't lose Rick and Maggie. Hopefully this season. I'm really just begging on to hope. But that comes in at number 17. Next up, we have Season 8, Episode 8, How It's Gotta Be. I remember this episode first came out, I was so excited, especially hearing that there was some really like life-changing event at the end of the episode, and I was just really curious. I thought maybe it was Carl's death, maybe it was Michonne, I had no idea. And obviously what we got was, at first I was kind of disappointed in this episode. I thought there could have been more to it, but honestly, after rewatching it a few times, I actually enjoyed this episode a lot more than I did when it first came out. Even though I did enjoy it precisely when it first came out, I just didn't enjoy it as much as I did later on. And part of that being, first of all, the bombing of Alexandria was very well done. I enjoyed. I wish at least one person got killed by them, though. I feel like it would have put more intensity into the situation. And Carl using the smoke bombs was clever, and just the music they brought back the soundtrack in this episode. This episode by far has the greatest soundtrack of any Walking Dead episode in history, in my honest opinion, because it's not just one amazing soundtrack or something. No, they have amazing soundtracks every scene. There's another amazing sound. There's like 5 soundtracks that I can take from this episode and call really good, because it's just, every second is just a soundtrack that is just so well fitting for the scene. The fact that they brought back Carl's theme song from Season 3 back in this episode is just like, it's like, wow. It was just wow. I even had a reaction of me reacting to some of the scenes of this episode, and I loved this episode. I mean, the Rick and Negan fight was great. I loved that whole thing. I loved the reveal of Carl's bite. I thought it was well done. I thought the stuff at the kingdom could have been cooler. Some of that stuff. The stuff on the road with Simon shooting the one dude in the face, that could have been better too. But that wasn't the exciting parts of the episode. The exciting parts were all the stuff at Alexandria. You know, Carl talking to Negan. Negan's acting, even Carl's acting in this episode was really good, better than it's ever been in any other episode. And I usually don't say that about Carl. So, you know, they did a good job. I thought a lot of characters did a good job in this episode, and made for a pretty freaking good mid-season finale. Next up, we have Season 5, Episode 16, Conquer. This was the finale of Season 5. It was very jam-packed with story. There was so much stuff going on. There was Daryl and Aaron on the road getting clobber-knockered by all those walkers. That was set by a trap by the wolves. We had Morgan coming back. We had Rick dealing with the whole situation of the people wanting to kick him out. You know, we had a lot of stuff going on. We had Glenn, Nicholas, you know, going off on their own, having that whole situation. Sasha just going crazy on Father Gabriel. Maggie trying to end that whole situation, keep them together. You know, and I loved how peaceful it was at the end of the episode. Everyone came together after the intensity of Glenn versus Nicholas. They came together. I loved that. And then we had, of course, the greatness of that last 5 minutes of Rick coming to and having his speech at the little like meeting from Alexandria, and just Pete Cummins slicing Reg's throat, and then Rick doing the deed towards Nicholas, shooting him in the head. Pete. Loved that. I loved Deanna saying do it. I loved the whole entire episode. It was one of those episodes that there's so much going on that it really just keeps you entertained 24/7, and it's not like there's not one point that's like slow, you know. It was just you know, going through the motions throughout the entire episode, and I loved that. I love that. It really brought all the story from the end of Season 5 together, and made Alexandria more of a home for these people, even though it didn't seem like it did. But obviously, leading into Season 6, everything that happened in this episode worked for the better. So, came for a really good episode. Next up, we have Season 6, Episode 12, Not Tomorrow Yet. This is the episode when it just got right into the action, because we saw the introduction of this new plan of, going to kill all the saviors at the outpost, the only outpost I know of. And I was like, alright, it's gonna take a few episodes till they actually do that. Maybe the finale, maybe episode 15, maybe they'll do it around there. But no, they just get right into it. Episode 12, boom, we're attacking the outpost, and I loved how they got into it so quickly. And this episode made for a very intense episode, especially just Rick killing people in that place. I loved the whole action sequences at the outpost. It was intense. You don't know what the hell's going to happen. And then, of course, Carol and Maggie getting kidnapped at the end of the episode was a big shocker for everybody, and made for a pretty good cliffhanger. And I loved the introduction to the hilltop in the previous episode. And we brought some of those characters like Jesus and the one Andy dude into the fold with this episode. And just overall showed who the saviors are as people. I mean, we saw the pictures on the wall that Glenn saw. Just going in, stabbing them in the head was so brutal. I mean, this episode kind of obviously showed the saviors are fucked up people, but it also showed that Rick's group is fucked up too. Like, that's kind of where they've gone. That's where they've been. That's what the apocalypse does to you. And I love the whole themes around this episode because of that. So, made for a great episode. Next up, we have Season 2, Episode 13, the finale, called Beside the Dying Fire. This is when all the walkers, the huge-ass herd, attacks the farm, right after Rick kills Shane, and I absolutely loved the first 15 minutes of the episode. I mean, this is the first episode I ever saw of The Walking Dead. I believe one of my friends showed me it, and we were just like, fuck it, I'll watch it. I always thought The Walking Dead was a movie. I actually didn't know it was a TV show. And he showed me the episode, and I was like, it's alright, but I didn't, I thought it was okay at first. I definitely decided to start watching more after that, but, I wasn't hooked. But this episode definitely did still, after watching it, multiple times afterwards, of course, it really brought a lot to the table. I mean, first of all, the first 10 minutes, or 15 even, were just intense. I mean, this is the Walker action-heavy episode that we all want. Obviously we had some pretty good ones here and there throughout the series, but this episode was the first big herd we saw that the group took out or tried to take out all at once. I mean, there was tons of walkers dying in this episode, left and right. I mean, seeing Herschel just make a stand with the shotgun was one of the most badass things we've ever seen in the show at this point. And we saw some people getting ripped apart and eaten alive, which was brutal to see, of course, but it made for an intense first 15 minutes of any episode that we've ever seen. And then, of course, we get some slow time in between, but then the ending, just Rick going crazy. I mean, after killing his friend and the people still kind of being a little, kind of scared of him almost. People were scared of Rick at the end of this episode. I mean, this was the Rick going crazy at his finest. I mean, obviously he went a lot more crazy in Season 3, but this is kind of the start of it. The start of the downfall of Rick, honestly. Obviously, that went up and down throughout the series, but this is when it was starting for the first time, and I loved that. Next up, we have Season 8, Episode 2, The Damned. This is the kind of really big episode of All Out War. This is when they were all attacking the outposts one by one. They were all doing it in different groups, and I just loved the whole action of this episode. This episode has some of the best action in the entire series. I'd say probably the best, maybe, possibly. I don't know, but it wasn't a very, it did have some emotion in it, but it wasn't that emotional in terms of, themes and stuff like that. It was mainly just a very entertaining, action-packed episode that was just badass to watch. But doesn't mean it didn't have any, important themes such, because we had a lot. We had Rick and the one dude fighting, and then killing him, and then looking in the mirror after finding that child in there. He was just like, holy shit, I just killed the freaking baby's father. And it really showed how terrible war can be, and kind of introduce Rick into the world of war, since obviously they've been through it before, but not at this type of, level, not at this type of large type, because the Governor's War, that was a small war. That was like a group of 15 against a group of 30 maybe. It wasn't much, This is a group of the hundreds, and then versus a group of another couple hundred. It's a big battle, and lots of people died in this episode. A lot of unnamed characters, of course. We had the one outpost led by Aaron. That one attack, that was a great attack to watch. I love the whole thing of that. Of course, Francine dying, Eric getting shot towards the end of the episode, Tobin getting shot but not dying. And then, of course, we had the Kingdomers getting ready for an attack but not quite going through with the attack just yet. We had Rick and Daryl going into that one building, which was just awesome to watch. because those characters are just badass. And then, of course, the hilltop outpost that they were attacking, the one that we saw in Season 6. And I loved that outpost attack for the fact of Morgan just going absolutely ham and just killing literally everybody in sight. Of course, the one problem I had is Jesus keeping that one savior alive. You know, I understand keeping the other saviors alive, you know, that makes sense. But why keep the savior alive who just betrayed you? You know, the one who peed his pants I'm talking about. He just betrayed you, and now he's trying to kill you right after betraying you. Like, come on. He's a threat. I feel like Jesus tried a little too hard to keep people alive in this episode. Like, I understand keeping some alive, but the reason why it made no sense for him as a character is because he had no problem killing characters in previous episodes, like in Season 6, you know? So I don't know. It kind of just felt out of character, but other than that, everything else was great. Then, of course, you had the Morales coming at the end of the episode, which was a huge surprise for everybody. I don't think anyone saw that coming, unless you saw the spoilers, of course. But, yeah, absolutely incredible. I love the episode, and that it comes in at number 12. Next up, we have Season 8, Episode 12, The Key. This episode was really hyped up because we knew that there was going to be a big Rick versus Negan fight sort of a thing, and that whole Rick versus Negan, man, was that great. I loved every second of that, especially the one scene when Flaming Lucille was happening with all the walkers, and I loved that whole thing. I loved the start of it when Rick ran through the door and did that like slide under Rick Negan's swing of the bat. The whole entire Rick vs. Negan stuff was great. Some of the best stuff of the episode. Then, of course, we had the new group of Georgie and Hilda and Mitch meeting with Maggie, Rosita, and Enid, and Michonne. And I loved that introduction of those characters. I'm sure we're going to see them again eventually, Season 9 or maybe in 10. And it really brought for possibly a much bigger world that we're going to see. I'm assuming the Commonwealth, I still think they are connected to them in some way, shape, or form. But this episode did a great job at introducing that, and it made for a lot more theories and, you know, possibilities in the future. Of course, we also had the great stuff with Simon and Dwight, you know, talking about not really liking Negan anymore, not really wanting him to take charge because he's too afraid to kill these people, or not that he's afraid to, he just doesn't want to. And Simon just thinks they should kill them all, and Negan doesn't think that. So I thought it was interesting seeing Simon's point of view on things, seeing him want to do things differently, and I enjoyed that whole entire part of this episode. I mean, I do believe this is one of the best episodes in Season 8. Not the best, but one of, for sure. Now we're getting into the top 10. These are the best episodes of the entire Walking Dead series. I consider most of these episodes to be 9.5 out of 10 and above, so basically almost on the verge of masterpiece type episodes. And first off, we have A, which is Season 4, Episode 16, the finale. Holy shit, this episode. I remember first seeing this, I was just shocked out of my mind. I was just tensed up from the beginning. I mean, holy shit, seeing these marauders, which I guess are claimers, whatever you want to call them, coming across, you know, the Rick and group, and almost the one dude almost raping Carl. Like, that's what it seemed like he was doing. We still don't know to this day. It sounded like he was taking off his belt and he's about to do some shitty, disgusting stuff. I don't know, but the whole sequence was just, it was brutal to watch. And then we saw the group just come on top and Rick biting out Joe's throat. Holy frick, I love that scene so much. And then, of course, you know, Daryl getting the upper hand, Michonne getting the upper hand on the one dude, and then Rick just taking the knife, going up to the one who was about to rape Carl, and he says, "He's mine," and he just starts just stabbing him. Holy shit, that scene. And that wasn't it. That enough makes the episode amazing. And then we get the whole introduction of Terminus and the group realizing that these people have a lot of this stuff that their old friends had, so meaning they might have killed them or captured them or something. And they find out, and it ends the episode with Rick saying his signature line, "You're fucking with the wrong people, or you're screwing with the wrong people," whatever the hell version you're watching, but still made for an incredible episode. And then leading on to number 9, the episode directly after that one, which is Season 5 premiere, No Sanctuary. This episode started off with one of the most brutal sequences of the entire Walking Dead history of those 4 characters, the random characters other than the one dude we kind of knew. Getting their throats just slit open. Holy shit, that was frightening to watch. And just seeing the group get out of the Sanctuary so fast was one of the most entertaining parts of the entire Walking Dead history. Just seeing them go through the terminus, just killing people to get out of there. And then the one scene, holy shit, that one scene of Rick stabbing the guy from behind, taking his AK-47, which is now like his signature weapon, and just spraying down that group of people in front of them. That was that scene. I loved Rick for that scene. That scene made Rick that was one of the most badass Rick scenes of the entire series. Just, you'll notice something with these top 10 episodes. It's got a lot of badass Rick moments, I gotta say, and that was one of them. And that's why I really don't want Rick to leave the show, man. I want to see more badass Rick scenes. But just seeing this episode play out was really great. I think it's a little bit overrated, though. I do feel like people usually put it like number 1, number 2, number 3. I put it a little bit lower at number 9 because it was great. It's just the one thing holding it down was Tyrese and that one dude talking. They talked they had way too much of that. I did not really care about what they were talking about. And that just went on for too long. I feel like they could have also showed more of the Sanctuary or the Terminus. Maybe showed more of Terminus in terms of the sick stuff going through it, like maybe more on the inside. I don't know, but it still made for a great episode. And then seeing them escape Terminus throughout that whole bunch of walkers was also pretty goddamn badass. So the whole episode was just badass, I gotta say. And then of course we had Morgan in the after credits scene, which was like, holy shit, don't forget about that sequence. And then just Rick being, let's go back and kill. Oh, don't forget about him finding Judith or meeting up with Judith again. That was great. And the whole reunion with Carol was also great too. Carol, I forgot about Carol. She was badass in this episode, dude. She was just taking people out left and right. That was one of the best Carol episodes. Gotta say, this is one of the best Carol episodes. Not the best though. I think The Grove is definitely Carol's best episode, but this is still one of them. Definitely when Carol signified herself as gangster-ass Carol. If you guys watch Jimmy Malcolm, you know what I'm talking about. Coming at number 8, we have Season 8, Episode 16, the newest episode that we've seen, which is called Wrath. This episode I absolutely loved. I mean, I saw it in theaters. You kind of have to love an episode that you see in theaters on the big screen, and I loved a lot of it. Of course, I also thought some parts were disappointing, like the fact that the battle wasn't as big as I wanted to see it as, but that doesn't take away the fact that it was still what it needed to be. It needed to be the group kind of coming over the whole war and looking past the killing and instead, taking the people in, not killing them all, and kind of understanding where they come from and rebuilding. And that's kind of what the whole episode was about. Towards the end, of course, but a lot of the other stuff I loved, like for example the whole Carl stuff, just the overall Carl theme going around, Carl flashbacks every now and then, just Rick thinking of Carl the whole episode after reading the letter in episode 15, and it made for a great whole sequence. I loved the sequence when they went to the big open farm area or the big open hill, and they just see that whole line of saviors coming over the hill, kind of like a freaking Viking battle or something like that, some medieval type stuff of them just lined up with their guns getting ready to mow down the people, and of course Eugene finally coming in clutch and making the guns explode on the people, which was so awesome to see. I didn't see that coming at all. And then of course the last 4 minutes was them shooting the people up not the last 4 minutes of the episode, but the 4 minutes after that happening was kind of the battle. It was kind of short, but it was still entertaining. But the part I loved about the episode the most was Rick versus Negan for like the 3rd time, and I loved seeing Rick in pain. He was like, please just let me tell you how we can live after. I don't have to kill you. And then he realizes I really can't live with this man, and he sees him crying, and he's like, I'm gonna cut his throat. but then he thinks of Carl again, and he realizes that's not me. That's not me. That's not what Carl would want. That's not what I want. So he tells Sadiq to save him, and then you see Maggie with her amazing acting, freaking out of the fact that they're going to keep him alive when they shouldn't. And then, of course, you have the rebuilding on the later parts of the episode, which was great and awesome to see. It was a very, very well done introduction into what we're going to see in A New Beginning in Season 9. Hoping that they keep a lot of these, story arcs that they started at the end of this episode. And overall, it was just a good way to lead into Fear the Walking Dead Season 4. I thought it was awesome seeing the theaters, of course, because it led into the episode 1 pretty well with the whole Morgan transitioning over. So I thought it was a great episode, even though a lot of people would disagree. I still think it did what it needs to do for an episode, even if it wasn't as action-packed as you were hoping. Coming in at number 7, we have Season 2, Episode 12, Better Angels, the best Season 2 episode in my opinion. This is, of course, the downfall, the ending of the downfall of Shane when he comes to the terms with himself and he says, screw it, I'm taking Randall out to the woods, I'm killing him, and then I'm going to go kill Rick and try to make up some bullshit lies so I can live a happy life with Carl and Lori. Obviously, it doesn't work out for Shane because Rick gets the upper hand. But this episode, man, I can't. This is the first moment when the show kind of went down a path of just darkness. Because before this, it was obviously a dark show before this, but it wasn't on the level that this episode brought to the table. I mean, it starts the episode with an awesome soundtrack, by the way. And we see, them, realizing they're going to honor Dale by not being a broken group anymore and by coming together and being good people with each other, being friends. And that just doesn't go well because Shane decides to screw it all up and do his own sort of a thing. And I loved the manipulation Shane was trying to do in this episode. It was a kind of slow episode, but it was one of those episodes that I just can't stand and not love and not want to rewatch every freaking day of my life, because that ending scene of Rick just begging for him to, not begging for mercy. He wasn't begging for mercy. He was begging for Shane to give mercy on himself, because he knew that no matter what Shane did, it would ruin not just, of course, his own life, but the family's life of Lori and Carl, the group's life. It would ruin everyone's life, because it wouldn't work out the way he hopes, and he was just begging Shane to make the right decision. And then you see Carl looking at him like, what the hell did you just do, Rick? Well, he didn't say Rick, he didn't say any of that, but you get the idea. He would say, what the hell did you just do, Dad? And looking at him, but then when he sees Shane turns, he realizes, oh, Dad didn't kill him because he turned, so he had to get bitten by a walker. So he shoots Shane, and then he forgets about it. He's like, oh, how did he die, Then you see the whole entire herd of walkers behind them, which was so epic to see. That ending the episode was just bone-chilling, and it led into a very good finale as well. So definitely deserves number 7 spot in my opinion. I mean, this is some of John Berthold's best work in the entire series, and just I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Coming in at the number 6 spot, we have Season 7, Episode 16. First day of the rest of your life. This is the start of All Out War, the beginning of the incredible story arc that went on throughout the entirety of Season 8, and I loved this episode. I mean, first of all, the first 30 minutes were pretty good. We had Dwight, of course, saying he wants to kill Negan. He wants to be a part of this war, this rise up that they're doing against them, but he wants to help, and he actually ended up helping pretty well by slowing them down when they were coming to attack Alexandria. Well, not planned to attack, but they ended up attacking, obviously. But they were planning to just give them one more ultimatum, let them know, you better listen to us, give us back Daryl, or we will kill Sasha. And she was already kind of dead because she killed herself, obviously, which I thought it was a decent send-off for Sasha. It was a strange send-off, I can't lie to say that it wasn't, but it was still interesting. And then the episode just was amazing. From the point of the Savior showing up to Alexandria to the end of the episode, it was just incredible. It was an incredible, 25 minutes or so. So first of all, we had Eugene coming and Rick realizing, you know, there's no help for this man. You know, he's a savior now. He's Negan now. So he tells Rosita, you know, just do it. Just blow up the thing and let's hope for the best. It doesn't work. And we get the insane reveal that no one saw coming. Well, some people saw it coming, that the garbage people were working with the saviors on a side deal, and that was just so intense to see. And we were like, oh, well, they're fucked now. There's nothing they can do, right? But Sasha comes in with the clutch and gives him a distraction for Carl to start just shooting people, and that starts the war. And it was very well done in terms of the action this episode. People were complaining a lot about certain action sequences in this episode. They were like, oh, I look in the background, I see garbage people just aiming their guns and not doing anything. But you gotta realize these garbage people are weird, okay? I don't think some of them were planning to kill anybody. I don't think some of them even knew how to shoot guns. They looked really stupid. I agree, it did look weird, but I think it was supposed to be that way. So obviously the saviors are much well trained than the garbage people. These garbage people they're weird people. I think we've come to that agreement, but this episode kind of signified that weirdness. But I really enjoyed the whole battle leading up to, of course, Michonne and them and the one girl fighting. I still wish she was fighting like a big buff dude rather than just another girl, which sounds weird, but like it was like that in the comics. Obviously it was a guy fighting Andrea, but I don't know, it would make it more scary if it was a big buff dude. It would make it more believable other than just some random white girl. But I did still enjoy that whole thing, and then her falling off, well, the white girl falling off, obviously. And then we see Negan saying, screw it, I'm gonna kill Carl because I don't want to, I really don't, but it's the only way you're gonna see things straight. I still don't know if he was actually gonna kill Carl or not, because I thought maybe he was gonna stop midway through as sort of another trick towards Rick. I still don't think, because he cares so much about Carl in Season 8, that I just don't know if he actually wanted to kill him, and that he actually was going to, but obviously it didn't matter because Shiva showed up just in the nick of time to scare the shit out of people, making for one of the most intense and awesome sequences of the entire series, where Shiva's just biting people, the Kingdomers come on horseback and start shooting people. That was great. And then it leads to the Saviors having to retreat, and then a really awesome 2-minute sequence at the end of the episode of Maggie talking about the future of, you know, what they're going to go through in the next season. And it made for a great ending to Season 7, which, you know, is definitely a controversial season, but in my opinion, it was the perfect way to end it, and kind of made it a much better season than people, you know, tend to make it out as. Next up, we have Season 3, Episode 4, Killer Within, my favorite episode of Season 3. This episode got me into the show in a certain point that Made Us Suffer obviously got me like 100% guaranteed to continue watching the show. You know, besides Dying Fire was the first episode I saw, but this episode was like kind of a middle ground where I was like, this episode is fucking great. Like, I will try to watch it, but, you know, there's no guarantees. But this episode, I love it. I love this episode, and there's certain points that make it this beloved episode for me personally, and I'll explain those points. So first of all, of course, the beginning. I mean, the beginning wasn't very entertaining or anything, but it was definitely good for character build-up, which is surprising because you look at this at the beginning of this episode, and it was just kind of joking around, you know, people just saying whatever, you know, but it was actually more important than you think. And then we get to the big reveal when they're just looking at each other from across, you know, the far, you know, Glenn, Daryl, and Rick are across the prison looking at Herschel finally walking, and everything's all hopeful and such. And then they see walkers in the prison, and that's when shit gets down, man, and Rick's freaking out, and it was an intense episode. And then, you know, Maggie trying to bring Lori inside, you know, to safety, and then more walkers inside the tombs, and they were just pissing themselves out of their minds. And then Lori gets pregnant at the worst possible time, or not doesn't get pregnant, but gets into labor. That's funny. She gets into labor at the worst possible time, and Carl has to deal with it. Maggie has to deal with it. Maggie deals with you know, this whole situation, which is kind of foreshadowing for her pregnancy in obviously later seasons. But I freaking loved the whole entire thing, and it was sad. This episode, I'm not gonna lie, made me cry. I was, what, 6th grade when I watched this episode? But I cried. I didn't even know, well, I didn't cry, I just teared up. You get the idea. But I didn't even know these characters that well. This is the 4th episode I saw of the entire series. Actually, no, it's like the 2nd episode I saw, because I skipped episode 2 and 3. I'm not gonna lie, I did. I went back and watched them, obviously, but I just never got around to them, and I just said, fuck it, I'll just go watch episode 4, because it's not like a series I cared about that much. I'll just, watch whatever. Thankfully, this is the episode I decided to, watch, because it's what got me into the show. I realized this is fucking incredible. And I teared up because I was like, this is sad. This little boy's mother is dying and having a baby, and she's freaking dying. She's getting her stomach cut open right in front of him. And I loved it. I loved every second of this episode, and if I could rewatch it for the first time, hell I would, because I just loved every second of it. And I hope that the series has more moments like this in the future, because I loved it. And then of course you had Rick just going ham on the one dude, what's his name, the one black dude, the one prisoner, I believe it was Andrew, and him realizing that he's the reason that all happened, and all the walkers came in. And then of course your boy Oscar showing his loyalty to the group by shooting Andrew in the face, saving Rick's life, which was great. I love to see that. Of course Oscar died a few episodes later, but it was still great. It was still great to see, and I enjoyed it for that. But obviously the Carl and Lori and Maggie moments were the best. And then of course Rick finding out at the end of the episode what happened, and he got into his state of craziness that went on throughout the entire season. So I love this episode, and that's why it comes in at number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have season 8 episode 9, which is titled Honor. Now this episode was, in my opinion, very not liked by the overall community, just because people said it was too slow. Obviously Carl was dying in it. But I disagree with all that. I think it was so important for the end of Carl and the end of his story arc. I mean, it put him in a position of being able to just give his goodbyes to everybody, and being able to tell Rick how much he loves him and how much he wants him to continue in taking care of Judith and such. And oh my god, I rewatch this episode all the time because it's just so good. It's so emotional, and they did such an incredible job at making people just cry their fucking eyes out. I mean, come on now. And people, obviously disagree with the death of Carl, but it doesn't matter. It still did it incredibly well. Even if you don't disagree with it, you can't deny the fact that the way they killed him off was so well done, and it made for such beautiful scenes and such sad, emotional scenes. And then that's not all you have. You have the emotion side of the episode, which is great. I love the emotional side of the episode. You also have the action part of the episode for those of you who are action junkies, which is of course Morgan and Carol going through the kingdom and just killing all those goddamn saviors and saving King Ezekiel, of course, and then little boy Henry killing Gavin in the end, which I still wish Gavin lived, but had to die, whatever. And just the one scene when they were just chilling in the sewer, and you just hear bombs and bombs and bombs outside, and then the ground shakes, and then dust comes off and goes into Carl's face, and Rick covers himself over Carl to protect him from the dust. I love that. I loved Carl's goodbyes to Judith. I loved Carl's goodbyes to Michonne, telling him that she's his best friend. I love Carl saying to Rick, the way Chandler Blake's acting in this episode was some of the greatest acting he's ever done. I would say his best. Same for Rick or Andrew Lincoln and Denai Guerrero. They did so good with the acting. I mean, they made me cry. And I mean, that's more reasonable, considering I've watched the show for 8 years, or like 6 years, I guess. But it was more reasonable for me to cry over this rather than cry over season 3 episode 4 over Laurie's death. But it's so good, man. I think this episode did its job perfectly. And then they had, of course, the Carl's, dream kind of the future, his kind of hopes and dreams for the future, and you can think about that. I love the beginning too, with that interesting song with Carl just doing the last things he wants to do before he dies, like playing with Judith, building, or not building, but planting a tree. I don't really know why, but planting a tree, I guess. Writing the letters to everybody, that was great. And it gave him away. I mean, people complaining that Carl didn't deserve this, whatever. They gave him a great episode and a great send-off for the character of Carl. So I loved it for that, and I'm happy that, I'm happy that they did it in a way, they did the whole death in a way that made Carl's death feel important and feel worth something. And this episode, even though I wasn't agreeing with Carl's death in episode 8, this episode signified the fact that I could accept his death. I could very well accept it. Now we are getting into the top 3. I consider these top 3 episodes to be all 9.9 out of 10s. I don't consider any episode to be perfect, because nothing is perfect in my opinion, but they are still on the verge of perfection, and basically I consider them masterpieces. And if you've been doing process elimination, I'm assuming you can guess what 3 episodes these are. But let's start off with number 3, which is Season 7, Episode 1, The Day Will Come When You Won't Be. I honestly cried like a little fucking bitch during this episode. I'm not even ashamed of it, because I think it's warranted after seeing someone you care about so much getting killed, and then seeing the whole group just devastated. And everything about this episode was beautiful, and it's why I actually ended up liking the cliffhanger, because the way they introduced this episode was so awesome. I loved how they showed it afterwards. They showed Rick and Negan talking afterwards, and the build up, the tension leading to what happened was so freaking tense. And then seeing Rick, just imagining all of them in his head, it's exactly what I wanted. Seeing like flashbacks of memories he's had with them throughout like really quick sequences, I wanted that so badly. And the fact that we got it with an amazing soundtrack, and then we saw Rick just sewing on top of the RV and kneeling on top of the RV and just looking at the one dude that was hanging off the bridge, and then he realizes, holy shit, like what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? I just lost 2 of my guys, 2 people I care about a lot, and now we have this guy, basically being a dictator over us. And then we of course go into the flashback of actually what happened. And oh my god, they did it so well. I mean, I think they did this I think they did it perfect. I can't complain. There's not one thing I would have done better. They showed the right amount of gore. They showed the right amount of different parts. I mean, just seeing Abraham get it was bad enough. That was bad enough. Seeing him get smashed in the head and everyone kind of tearing up, that was bad enough. And then seeing Glenn get it, holy shit. Seeing his eyeball pop out of his freaking skull, seeing it get smashed in after. Oh my god, the acting in this episode is so good between every character, every single one of them, just every character's facial expressions after these different scenes. So well done. Lauren Cohan, Andrew Lincoln, they all deserve Emmys. They deserve Emmys for this performance in this episode alone. I mean, it's hard to put into words, because that's how good it is. That's how good this entire episode is. And then you see the incredible scene of, Rick having to cut off Carl's arm under Negan's orders. And he doesn't want to, obviously, because it's his son. And he ends up deciding, I have to do it. Andrew Lincoln's acting right here is the best part of the entire episode, well, in terms of his acting. And it was so good. I mean, just seeing Andrew Lincoln just crying, begging Rick, or begging Negan, begging him, on his knees just begging. You see Rick like a little bitch in this episode, and I loved that. I love seeing Rick like a badass, don't get me wrong, but seeing him defeated was obviously not, didn't feel good personally, but in terms of a writing standpoint, in terms of just entertainment, it was so well done and made for an episode that I believe should be praised as one of the greatest episodes of television history. Then of course we get the ending of just the group just being broken. You know, they're kneeling. Amazing soundtrack, by the way. And then Maggie, Lauren Cohen's acting is so good in this scene. I mean, just seeing her crying, saying, we gotta get ready to fight. And she can't even speak right because she's so out of it. She just saw her love of her life, who she's gonna have a child. He's gonna have his child. Then seeing him die in front of him just broke Maggie down. And then seeing, you know, the dream sequence of what the life could have been like in the future if Negan hadn't been here. And Negan says it can't be like that. I think this episode, I'm getting chills just thinking about this episode right now, so I want to go watch it again, but that comes in at number 3. There is still 2 more that I believe are better. I'm gonna be honest, these top 3 episodes are kind of interchangeable for me. Like, now that I'm thinking about it, I honestly would put them, I could put, you know, 701 at number 1, I could put this one at number 1, I could really put them anywhere. They're kind of interchangeable, they always change around the more I watch them and such, but this is kind of how I feel like I wanted to put them in the video. So coming in at number 2, we have Season 6, Episode 9, No Way Out. I was so excited for this episode because it's one of my favorite points in this comic book, and seeing it on screen, it was so well done. I mean, the fact, okay, first of all, let's just get over the beginning. So the beginning had a pretty good intro. It had a pretty entertaining intro of course, Daryl just using his badass skills to blow up the saviors with the RPG. That was awesome. I'll just put it out there. And then we get the group walking through the Walker herd in their gutted, filled coats, and pretty entertaining soundtrack in this episode as well. Actually, one of the best we've ever seen throughout the entire of the episode. This episode felt like a movie almost. I mean, a lot of these top episodes feel like they belong in the cinema. That's when you know it's good, if it feels like a movie, if it feels like it belongs in the theaters. This episode was one of those episodes, I have to say. So, of course we had that, and then we had the scene when the whole entire Anderson family gets taken out by the Walkers. I remember how tensed up I was in this scene, even though I saw it coming because it happened in the comics. I was still tensed up like crazy. I was literally clenching my butt cheeks during this scene because I was like, holy shit, what the hell is about to happen? And it was awesome. It was awesome. The fact that they had showed a kid getting his head bitten off was pretty crazy in the first place. And then seeing Jesse go, and then seeing Ron just go insane. He says, fuck it. My whole family's dead. I might as well take out Rick while I can. And Michonne saves his life. But it ends up getting Carl shot in the eye in the process. And I loved that whole entire thing. And the whole theme of the episode, the whole idea of the group rising up against the Walker herd. I mean, just seeing even people who you never expect to be a fighter, like Eric, Olivia, Spencer, all those characters coming out and fighting, and I loved that. It was the like big Alexandria episode. This is what the entirety of season 6 led up to, and we saw Rick realize that these people are capable of something, even though he didn't think that previously. And this episode signified the fact that he believes they could do something. Seeing Rick go crazy as well was also entertaining, just seeing him go outside with the hatchet and just slicing and dicing with his hatchet. I loved that so much. I loved that whole entire sequence. And then I loved everyone just coming out and just killing walkers. I mean, entertainment-wise, this is one of the best episodes because it's action-packed. It's just non-stop action, just people going, killing walkers. And then that end sequence was edited and directed to perfection. I mean, just seeing everyone just slicing, and you couldn't really see what was going on because it was dark, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. They made it well done. They made a scene that I didn't think could have been that well done. They made it well done, and they did it exactly how I wanted them to do it, and I'm proud of them for that. And then of course you have the ending of Carl holding his father's hand in a beautiful way to end a beautiful episode that goes down as one of the best episodes in The Walking Dead history. And in my opinion, the second best. And finally, if you did process elimination, you can probably figure it out. If you got this way far through the video, I applaud you. I am going to definitely put, keys and stuff, different points where you can click in the description, because I don't want you guys to watch the whole thing. I don't think anybody wants to watch a whole 2.5 hour video, but just hear me out here. My favorite episode of the entire Walking Dead history is Too Far Gone. Season 4, Episode 8, the mid-season finale. Now, this episode, first 10 minutes, they're kind of slow. There's not much going on. It's the governor telling his people, we gotta go attack the prison. We have to at least try to get it. We don't have to obviously attack it. We can just try to take it over, and if we can't, we're gonna have to be prepared to attack. It takes, Herschel and Michonne's prisoner, and they're already starting off awesome. Then the governor comes to the tank, and that's when shit hits the fan. And I don't know what episode's gonna be able to beat this one. I really don't, because I've never been able to find an episode that I think is better than this one. But maybe, I don't know. So I love seeing, first of all, the conversation between the governor and Rick's trying to find a peace between them, and everything Herschel tells Rick in the earlier parts of season 4 all comes back in this episode. And that's why you see Herschel smiling, because Rick is saying the same things he's saying. You're saying you're not too far gone. You're never too far gone. You can come back from, terrible things. You can come back from situations, that happened in the past. You leave the past behind you and you move on. And Rick saying stuff like that, was so beautiful. And the whole entire speech was so beautiful. And it led to the governor saying liar and chopping off Herschel's head. I still am in shock from that scene from 5 years ago. I'm still shocked from that scene. I honestly, once he put the sword to his head, I saw it coming, but I was still in shock because it was so brutal and led to a long 20-minute battle between the governor's people and Rick's group, and I loved every second of it. I mean, some of the best action we've had in the series. Then seeing Rick and the governor fight was just the best way to end their, the governor's reign. And then seeing Michonne save Rick's life, I honestly, for a second, I thought Rick was fucked. I was like, holy shit, he's being choked out by the governor. How is he gonna live? And seeing Michonne come in with the clutch and just stabbing him through the stomach. Amazing. I absolutely loved that. And then, of course, we saw some other badass stuff from Daryl, some badass stuff from other characters. It was awesome. I loved every second of this episode. I gotta be honest. And then we saw, of course, the saddest part of the episode, which was Rick and Carl coming together and seeing that Judith is not in her crib and that there's blood in the crib, and the baby carriage, not a crib, my bad. Seeing that there's blood filled in it. Now, I don't think they knew she was dead. I think they just thought, what else could possibly have happened to her, They were in shock, because yes, there was no bones, so, you can assume she's not dead, but what are they gonna do? They are in shock after what just happened, and they see blood in a baby-filled carriage, they're going to be sad. They're going to be sad. And the acting from Andrew Lincoln and Chandler Liggs in this scene of them crying, so well done. I remember the scene, I remember the music, I remember the soundtrack, everything about it was so well done. And seeing Lily finish off the governor, I mean, I loved this episode so much. So much. Everything about the last 20-30 minutes, it was the end of an era for The Walking Dead, in my opinion. It was the end of the prison, it was the end of the governor, it was the end of so much. So many story arcs led up to this episode. It made for what I believe to be the best episode in The Walking Dead history, and I would love for an episode to beat it, but not one has been able to do it yet, because it brings emotion, it brings action, it brings intensity, it brings sadness, it brings freaking brutality, it brings so much together in one episode. It has everything The Walking Dead should be in one episode, other than, you know, Walker action, because there really wasn't any Walker action, but you didn't need that because it was everything else mixed in to one almost perfect episode. This is like a 9.99999 out of 10. I still won't give it a perfect because I don't believe anything's perfect, but it is still so good. And yeah, that's my list. So that is the video. Long ass video, I know. I'm sorry for making it so goddamn long, but it's what it had to be. It's how it's got to be. So let me know in the comment section below. I'm sure you don't want to tell me your top 115 episodes unless you want to go through each and every episode and rank them in the comment section. Be my guest. But just give me your top 10, your top 15, your top 20, maybe, you know, your top 5, whatever you want to give. Maybe give your top 5, top 10 best, and then also give your top 10 worst, something like that. And let me know, do you agree with my list? Do you disagree? Just let me know in the comments. I want to know from you guys. And definitely, please like the video. Please subscribe because I worked so hard in this video. This is like I've been working on this video for like 2 months. If you don't notice any change in my voice between the beginning of the video and the end, I mean, I doubt there's any big change, but still work on this video for the past 2 months. So please just subscribe, like, everything in between. Share the video. I want this video to, you know, get out there because I've never seen anybody do this. I've never seen anybody rank all episodes of The Walking Dead, all 115, on a YouTube video. I've seen people do it on, you know, websites and articles and such, but I haven't seen somebody make a video on it, and I'm glad to be possibly the first. Maybe there is someone else that I don't know of. I don't know, but hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in my next one. Peace out.